r/AskReddit by LaughWithMEmes. What is the most horrifying, haunting image or moment that you can't get out of your head? I work as an intern at a funeral home. When my fiancé killed himself, my boss and I took care of his body ourselves. The moment I'll never forget though, is going to pick him up at the medical examiner's office and seeing the ID tag around his ankle. That made it real. I'll also never forget driving him to the crematory in our hearse, pushing his body into the retort, saying my final goodbyes, and starting the machine. The time someone threatened to kill me with a knife while I was at a house party. Long story short, some asshole bumped into me and called me a fucker. I called him an ass, and then he grabbed me and pointed a knife at my face. Internally I was freaking out, but I was able to give him the IDFC right now expression, so I just shook my head in disappointment at him. He left and I sat down hyperventilating, because /I almost got killed for someone bumping into me. Waking up in the hospital after trying to kill myself last summer and seeing my mom completely broken. Edit, thank you for the gold stranger, thank you all for asking as well. I'm doing much better now. That's probably my biggest fear about attempting suicide, hope you're feeling better though. A video is saw on 50/50 of a man who had been cut in half by a train. He didn't realize he'd been run over and was missing his bottom half, so he tried to stand. He spun and fell down in the mud. It's graphic, obviously, but it's more sad to me. I have never felt so horrifyingly bad for anyone in my life. This just happened last night. My dog was 12 years old and she was a King Shepherd. Super healthy but had some hip issues. Last night she fell and couldn't get up. She looked at me so sadly and I said to her, "It's okay Sadie, you can let go. Your job is done here. We all love you so much." She had something to drink and eat and I was just expecting her to get up and walk again. Because this had happened before and in the past she was just sore and would work through it and be fine. Well, I went to go check on her at 230 am and her tongue was hanging out. She was laying in same spot I left her. She was still warm, but she was gone. I put her head under a pillow and just loved her and stayed with her all night. My wife was working nights and I couldn't call her, so I stayed with my dead dog till 7 am just letting her and telling her how much I fucking loved her and how much she changed my life. She was a rescue dog. She was abused straight from the womb basically. We got her at 4 months old and she was so broken and hated everyone and everything. We loved and loved and loved her and got her to where she was comfortable around anyone and anything. We had a baby 3 years ago and she was so protective of my little dude. Licking him when he cried and running to get us when he sobbed. I've never been so hurt in my entire life. My baby girl is gone and it feels like nothing will fill that void. I know this is pretty tame compared to some of the other stories on here, but seeing my dog just laying there without me tore me to shreds. I should have been there. I should have been holding her. I didn't want her to die alone. When my cat was being euthanized, how fast it was, the last breath, his eyes/pupils getting so dilated and looking like they burst. It was awful. This is a big fear of mine. My cat might have to get euthanized soon. I've had her for 10 years and other than behavioral issues from age and stuff, she's completely healthy. I've never had to see a pet die besides a fish and I'm terrified. I'm so sorry for your loss and I hope you're doing okay. The only really heavy thing I witnessed was my uncle's wake. His wife had been shaky all day until in the evening she broke down over his corpse screaming and wailing, "You're the love of my life. Come back. Wake up." I didn't even have much attachment to my uncle because I didn't know him well and I was just a kid, but that made me cry. Also the image of his face, my first time seeing a corpse the day of his funeral after avoiding it the past evening. His skin was so pale and waxy it looked weird and there were spots of decay in the corner of his mouth because he'd been left out too long. Bad day. I really hate open casket funerals. Saw my share of them when I was in the honor guard and I don't ever want to see another. My little niece died. When I saw her before she was buried, I noticed the stitches in her lips keeping her mouth closed. It looked like they were pulling, as if she was trying to open her mouth but couldn't. I don't know why that bothered me so much. I think about it all the time. Edit, it wasn't a total open casket funeral, but close family did see her before she was buried. We left her pictures and notes and had the chance to say goodbye. After reading this, I now remember the stitches in my grandma's mouth when she was in the casket. May their souls rest in peace. That guy in France that fell out of a 3rd-story window onto a 4-foot pole and it like went into his ass and ended as a hump in his shoulder but didn't break the skin. He was still alive when the paramedics came. It was all on video. Crazy. I remember that video. Not gonna rewatch since it's clear in my mind as the day I watched it. I thought it was unfair that he didn't die right away. Why did he have to suffer so much? But after watching so many videos on WPD and another site, you realize life ain't fair and life is so fragile. Some people live for days with gruesome wounds, and some die from falling wrong. While not a real life scenario, the curb stomp scene from American History X is just seared in my mind. The close up of the guy when he opens his mouth and bites on the curb, I can just feel the grit in my mouth. I'm cringing here typing about it. The sound of the teeth touching the concrete is what gets me. Ugh, every time. Talking over the phone to my dying grandfather as he laid on his teethed while my dad held the phone up to his ear. He couldn't talk anymore at this point, but towards the end of the call he let out one dry, rattling moan. Especially coming from somebody as sharp and stoic as he was, that was something. My dad suffered with a terminal illness. Was horrifying watching him fade away in front of my eyes and there wasn't anything anyone could do about it. I was there the moment he died, and that moment will live with me forever. This is my answer too. My nana's death was grisly and traumatic for everyone involved, and I wish to God I hadn't been there for it because even now, 5 years later, it's the clearest memory I have of her. My brother's suicide. I found him in my backyard from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. He was my best friend. If anyone remembers Yak Backs. I was home alone, 12Y/0, and heard my brother calling my name desperately over and over, followed by please. Come help, coming from the attic. Went up there, and it was coming from a big box, and I open it, and I can tell it's just an old Yak Back. Then it sputters and dies. And I had an intense sense of dread. And then the light bulb in the attic popped. Almost broke my leg getting out. Sat on the driveway till my parents got home. He swears he doesn't remember making that recording. Probably when I was 12 and I watched this woman who I fully believe will eternally burn in hell cut this man on a motorcycle off. His daughter was on the back. There was a horrific accident and the man lay there dying. I ran out with my dad who had his medical bag. Him being a massive show off paid off this once. The girl was covered from head to toe in road rash. She was in shock and stood over her father, stared at him and kept saying, "Dad. Dad." It was awful and I had nightmares about it for months. The poor man ended up dying in the hospital and I can't imagine what the daughter must have gone through from then on. I work in a hospital. A patient pressed her call bell, and when I walked in, she asked if I could tell her family she loves them, but an angel is here for her. About 5 minutes later she passed away. One of my fellow residents had this happen when he was on call in the cardiac ICU. Guy woke up, said it was time for him to go, talking to someone who wasn't in the room, then said bye and immediately died. Weird. My parents yelling, and my brother's face while trying to get me out because I was trapped under a vehicle. My leg was being crushed. My friend having been shot through the left side of his body. He was pale. He was gasping for breath. And we were tearing out his clothes and gear so we could look for the bullet wound. I'll carry this image for the rest of my life. My sister called me for help because she went to visit our grandma and she had fallen. I run across the street and look in the patio window to see my grandma on the floor with a pool of blood forming. I was so terrified, and to make things worse the door was locked and her landlord couldn't get it open. So I kicked the door on while calling 911. She was okay. It was just a big scrape on her forehead, no stitches needed. But seeing her motionless with blood pooling was too much. Afterwards I helped my mom bleach all the blood up. It was something I'd rather never have to do again. The scent, the amount of blood, and how hard it is to clean. My daughter Kira fell from our 3rd floor window. My wife and I watched her stand up suddenly, entranced by the rain, and run full speed through a screen. We were sat playing with her, but it was like we were underwater. Our 3-year-old autistic daughter surely was dead, and we helplessly watched it happen. The 40 seconds it took me to get down the stairs will haunt my memory till my last breath. She recovered quickly from several broken bones and a ruptured spleen. Please like and subscribe for more. This is Laugh with Memes. Goodbye.